Hey, watch this episode on YouTube.
Two dudes watch cartoons. Two dudes watch cartoons. Two dudes watch cartoons. Two dudes watch cartoons. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And Madeline.
That's right. Welcome back to another episode of Two Dudes Watch Cartoons and Madeline. Today, my name, I'm all mixed up here. Welcome back. The podcast where two dudes watch cartoons. That's us. I've totally flubbed it. My name is Alex.
And my name is Evan. And as you've heard already, today we were joined by one of my good friends, Madeline Horwath, fellow cartoonist for The New Yorker. We've been pals for a long time. And I don't know when or why or how, but connected over the movie that we're covering today. Before we dig into that, just want to do our quick shout out up top about the writers and actors strike going on in Hollywood right now. Writer's strike is going on nearing 100 days, so a little over
That's
3
long.
months. So if you want to donate to the entertainment community, you can do so at entertainmentcommunityfund.org. But Madeline, thank you so much for joining us.
How did you guys connect over this movie? That's my first question. Let's start there. What's everyone's history with this movie?
It was either connecting over this or the Eagles.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know how it came up. Maybe one of us posted something about it on our stories or something.
Did I post like this or something?
Honestly, it might have been.
I'm gonna start crying right here and right now.
If you're not watching the YouTube, Madeline has the tin, the fruit candy tin from the movie,
Brave
which
of
we're covering
Sight
today.
guys.
Yeah.
This is our daily reminder to go watch our YouTube. Okay,
Yeah.
So holy crap. I don't even know we've said it yet. It's called Grave of the Fireflies. It is by Studio Ghibli, famous, renowned. And just to piggyback on part of Evan, we're transitioning. We're going to not really try to cover anything that's being, that's from a struck company at this time. So part of the reason we're taking a look back, this film's from 1988.
It came out the same year as Totoro.
Oh, fun
Yeah.
fact. Wow, so
Very
they're
different
just like,
vibes.
yeah, well,
Yes.
very different vibes, but they're like bang bang, we got a lot of hits this year. That's crazy. I'm not even alive. Like it's crazy to me to think about things that like happened before I was alive. I don't really have context for them. But I've never seen this film. I've heard of it like briefly, not like anything major. I heard it was a great film. I just finished watching it maybe like 30 minutes ago, and I spent the last, 25 minutes crying. So I am excited to talk about this, excited to hear what you guys think. Holy crap, what a movie. Normally we come in here and like crack a bunch of jokes, but that almost feels like I don't know I can do that right now. I'm in mourning.
I can.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's why you're here. That's what we need.
Yeah. Madeline, when was the first time you recall encountering this movie?
I had known about it for a while. High school, my friend group was anime club, so of course, that movie was known. And I was like putting off watching it, and then finally, I think sophomore year of college, I watched it, and yeah, I had the typical reaction, just sort of lost.
Oh, yeah.
High school was probably the first time I watched as well. I was with a couple buddies. We were like going through the Ghibli catalog, maybe watching one a weekend or something. And it's like, My Neighbor Totoro, fun.
Yeah.
Howl's Moving Castle, yippee. And then Grave of the Fireflies. So if you're not familiar with this film, if you can't tell by our vibe and just general listlessness in introducing this movie, it's super depressing movie. It's about two orphans in Japan in World War II, and that's like sort of the weird roundabout thinking that led me to suggest this movie. People are talking about Oppenheimer. That's in the zeitgeist right now, and particularly there's that discourse about the scene where they're deciding on what cities to bomb, and I think both of you have seen it, but that particular piece of dialogue where people have different reactions to the scene where the guy's like, oh, that's where we vacationed or something
Took it
along
off
those
the
lines.
list. He goes, that was where we honeymooned.
That's actually based off, that did happen. That was, don't know what his name was, Henry Stimson. And they were talking about places to bomb, and someone suggested Kyoto. And this man, Henry Stimson, said, absolutely not. No, he was the Secretary of War. It's culturally so significant, and they chose Hiroshima because it was seen as like a military town. It was industrial, and then Nagasaki was not. I mean, Hiroshima should never have happened, but Nagasaki was not supposed to happen. It was some soldiers going rogue.
That's
But
crazy. I actually think the line Evan's talking about in the movie, though, where he goes, we have a list of 11 cities, 10. I took Kyoto off the list because that's where me and my wife honeymooned.
Yeah.
To me, that
That's
was
true.
like the soul of the movie, if I'm being honest. Like the callousness of war and like the destruction that they're on bringing and the total like blind eye they've sort of turned to it. That line in the movie like struck me like a gut punch. Like I was like, oh man. And in all honesty, take that feeling, that vibe, and bring it on over here, because this man just like the horrors of war, and also there's just so much like I don't even know. I'm fresh off it, so I'm trying to like melancholy optimism rooted in like nothing's gonna work out, but at the same time, the older brother he's like doing everything he can to keep the vibes up, if you will. And it's so rough. Oh my gosh.
And it's actually based off true story.
Shut up.
What? It was, obviously the guy, Saitama, the older brother?
Saita and
Setsuko.
No. Setsuko, yes.
Oh, Setsuko's the little girl.
His sister.
Oh, because I remember her going, Saito, I have some food for you. And I'm just like, oh God. No, the man who wrote Grave of the Fireflies and inserted an apology to his young sister who did die of malnutrition, and they were orphaned. So there's all these elements on top of one another within Grave of the Fireflies that really speaks to true stories, Japanese like social norms, wealth disparity, because a lot of the victims of, say, I forget the name of everything, but like survivors of Tokyo firebombing, the homeless who, as a result of firebombing and the atomic bomb, were outcast of Japanese society because, one, they didn't know that radiation poisoning, if we're talking in terms of the atomic bomb, they didn't know that radiation poisoning was not contagious from person to person. You can only get from the direct source. But with the fire bombings, these people don't have their houses. They're badly burned. They're a reminder of the loss of the war.
Oh. So it's kind of that reminder of the loss of the war, like like you said about like Japan's societal norms, jumping ahead a little, but like his aunt's like, you lazy, no for good, like you're not out helping, providing, like why should we keep feeding you? Like that shit hurt. But like, not saying she's wrong, like, if you're gonna, he can't just like, if he's not going to school, but like it still was like he just went through this huge loss. Anyways, that's
actually, I'm going to interrupt and just say that actually brings about a good point of the differences of reactions and sort of the cultural divide between Japan and the West, the US, because a lot of Japanese audiences size that Saita being admirable for getting up and leaving and taking care of his sister, whereas, the typical American saying, just do the work.
Yeah, that's interesting because that was like so tragic to me. It was like a really first class look at almost like how someone becomes homeless. because you know you always have like you run through like, man, they don't have any family or like no one they could stay with, and it's a lot of times, and especially veterans and wars, this is how it comes to pass sometimes. And so the whole thing start to finish brutal, but man, it was so beautifully told, animation style, and just like
Yeah,
I don't
music.
even the music, the
Yeah.
music really helps it. But like I said, they were able to find like such small bits of happiness and optimism in literally like the roughest situation life can bring.
Yeah, let me just preface the plot real quick, succinctly, so people know a little bit
a good
if they
idea.
haven't seen the movie yet. Because it is sort of a difficult movie to talk about, not just because of
Yeah.
its contents, but just the vibe.
Yeah.
So, in the final months of World War II, 14-year-old Saita and his sister Setsuko are orphaned
14.
when their mother is killed during an air raid in Kobe, Japan. After falling out with their aunt, they move into an abandoned bomb shelter with no surviving relatives and their emergency rations depleted. Saita and Setsuko struggle to survive.
This is short selling like the reveal of all of these plot points. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
we don't
Yeah.
find out that the mother is dead for a while. At first, she's just we think she's somewhere else, and then she's injured, and then we don't even really see that she died. He just is like, I need to hide this from her. Oh my god! Every huge reveal was done so fucking casually. It was like, wait, what? What did he just say? Oh god, it was good. I highly recommend this. I'm like in emotional turmoil. I'm so sorry. Go on.
And then remember, this came out the same year as Satsuke and her younger sister May, as they settle into an old country house with their father and wait for their mother to recover from an illness in the area hospital. She gets better as the
Yeah.
sisters explore their new home and encounter befriend playful spirits in their house in the nearby forest. Most notably, the massive cuddly creature known as Totoro. Same year, same studio.
All right, but ready? There's some themes that are co-aligning here. I do very briefly. I do think the illness of a parent, children sort of on their own, essentially for a little, and then I'm curious what you guys think, but I think there's a little talk of spirits here, not like very directly, but towards the end of the movie. So I see a common through line, but man, tonally, totally different movies.
There's also what some people draw as almost a sort of allude to Satsuke and May, because remember the scene where, spoilers, Setsuko dies. The scene where she dies in the bomb shelter, you see these two girls who are dressed in Western clothes overlooking
They come
like sort
back
of their
to
view.
their home,
And yeah, and they're so happy. They're like, oh, it's good
And
to
they
be home.
put
And
on the
people are-
record player. They're like dancing. Oh, sorry, go on. It was unreal. And that's because like,
This man has the attitude of someone who just saw this movie.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna keep interrupting on
The
all
reaction is
moments.
very raw.
It
I'm-
is.
Yeah.
Go on.
I think that's probably why I didn't want to like watch it. I just kind of wanted to have all reflections and knowledge of the movie and context with it at sort of an even plane.
Mhm.
So Alex, you're fucking this up.
I know. I'm so sorry. That's usually what I do. I'll keep going. I apologize. You're making a beautiful point. I love it. Go on.
Mhm.
Yeah, people address that as like, oh, it's like Satsuke and May, because a lot of people say it takes place at the same time to try to get away from the cities. I mean, even in Hiroshima, I believe before the bombing, 23,000 children were evacuated from the city.
Mhm.
So it's like a lot of people knew to leave the cities, but many people could not.
Mhm.
And that was just sort of that almost allude to Totoro that people suggest was in Grave of Fireflies. And then she dies.
Yeah, which I mean, obviously, this whole movie is sort of somber and just simmering with like profound despair and grief. But it also, I've seen the movie a handful of times, and I went back and watched it today. and it still emotionally hits just as hard. Like, and one thing I forgot is that it starts with Saita dying in the
Yeah.
subway station.
And
And so
yeah.
it starts on that note, and you sort of know Setsuko dies because they show up in the spirit plane or whatever it is, and then you proceed forward with the narrative.
That kind of makes me think of what this movie overall is, because it seems like a lot of it is a farewell to pride.
Mm.
The writer is, the one who wrote Greater Than Fireflies, wrote it as an apology to his sister. It is a goodbye story of what happens with the pride and the overall message. Because, when it was announced that Japan has surrendered, Setsuko is still upset. How could the great empire fall?
Mm-hmm.
And he's still waiting for his dad, who's obviously perished. He's going off in pride to take care of him and his sister instead of listening to his aunt. And there's even moments where, he was filled with this, but then when it's failed him, he is sort of a untouchable in the subway station. And you see him in Saita sort of be like that when they're playing on the beach and they find a dead body, and Saita just says, "Don't look at that." That was a person who had a backstory too. And it just seems like with the loss of coming with war, that you forget that you have to remind yourself that these are people. And that's just what I'm thinking of.
I
is
noticed
just
that.
the consequences of pride almost in a losing war.
I don't remember where I read it, but I was reading either a review or some analysis of the movie, and they're sort of saying like Saita, kind of what you were saying, Madeline, is Saita represents like the Japanese Empire at this time, like
Yeah.
pride in Japan. Setsuko is representative of like the old tradition, which is what Saita is trying to protect. And there's like a third thing that I'm butchering and totally forgetting at this moment. So that sort of leads to the demise of both of those things, and whether one blames Saita or not. Like you could sort of see how that analogy tracks. Alex, obviously, you've had a very emotional reaction to this movie.
Yeah.
Did I preface it at all? Like, what were
Well, I guess the comparison
impressions
to
going in?
Oppenheimer, I made the connection as to the generality of what was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to be like a happy, fun, romp. So, but I just like, we're in this age where a lot of people are discrediting animation as just like a child's medium. And like stuff like this is like proving just further, like every bit of detail was so beautiful, from the animation to the story. It is something like I wouldn't even dare show a child. You know what I mean? And so I love watching things like this. It reminds me of why we started this podcast, in all honesty. And so I think that was ready for kind of generally what I was getting into, just not, I wasn't ready emotionally what I was getting ready into. Like I knew, I guess it could be sad, but I guess the method of which it was sad, kind of like you guys were talking about, like his pride is what got him in the way, and obviously all these unforeseen circumstances of the war, but he still has all this like faith and love for his great country, the Empire of Japan. And so it's hard watching his little sister end up taking the fall. And another thing that really struck me is like, dude had 3,000 yen still, like, in the bank. Like he was trying to like ration it in the thought, I'm assuming, that he thought his dad was coming home. Like his sort of pride led to this like blind faith that really just led them both astray. It was really hard to watch because, like Evan said, at the beginning you see that he's like, someone on the subway that no one even wants to bother with. And I think it was, for me, it just caught me off guard. The sibling sort of vibe always gets me, like having a younger sibling. Like there's many times like they just don't understand and you want to tell them like, no, this is just how it is. And you can't just be straight up with like a kid that's that is that young, and finding out that Setsua is only 14 made it even rougher. I kind of thought he was like a little older, I guess, but shit hit hard. Every turning point, I was just like, no. I think the part that really got me though was when like they left their aunt's house. That was just like such an unfortunate falling out, because it went from it was such a drastic turnabout too. It was like they were like, oh, thank God we all have great white rice again. Da, 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 da. And then the very next meal, they were like, I'm tired of rice pudding. And she's like, we don't get any rice. Like it's for the people that are working hard right now.
It blows my mind that the people will actually believe the U.S. propaganda that if the soldiers didn't go in, if they didn't drop the bomb, it would have been 1 million U.S. deaths. And it was just like, everyone was fucking starving there. They were going through a famine. People were eating grass. They weren't going to fight an American soldier fresh from San Francisco.
Yeah. One of the things that I really appreciated about this movie, watching back, and it happens when they go to the aunt's house, is like just a lot of the subtlety of how this story is told, like with the rationing of the rice. Before they like say it outright, they're eating dinner together. They have rice porridge out of this pot. And they have like the boarder at the house who's a guy working in a factory or something, and the daughter also is contributing to the war effort. They get like these big heaping scoops of rice porridge. You can see the clumps of rice in it. And then Saita and Setsuko are given essentially just like the water from it.
The broth.
And you can see Saita's eyes like do a double take as he gets his like serving. And again, like so much of this movie is in these subtle moments. It's almost in like, I would call this a slice of life movie, because it is really just about living during war times. Granted, it's the most depressing, grief-filled slice of life sort of piece of media or animation that I've ever consumed, but it hits so subtly and so powerfully.
When I was even sadder for me, it was not when they just got the rice porridge from the aunt, because you saw that there was like, oh, you can work and then get it. She gives you a way out. Is when they go to the doctor and he just offers a glass of water. That felt so much more helpless to me, because that's all the doctor had.
He didn't give any medicine. Every turn of this was like, I really think the struggle for food is such an interesting one, because it's obviously like such a basic necessity, but it also turns people like grumpy and greedy. You know what I mean? Like nothing will do it quicker than like food. It really messes with your sense of like mine versus ours, if you will.
Yeah.
But it was just so that was, I mean, so yeah, the first part, their first home gets bombed. It was brutal watching like I said, we saw his mother all bandaged up like a mummy. And then just in the next couple scenes, he was like, she's dead, but I can't tell Setsua yet. Like it was like, holy shit, just one tragedy after another. And then even, we've talked about it now, but when she does end up dying at the end, all that we get of it is he just goes, she never woke up from that. And it's just like, oh man, they really know how to like let a moment land in this, if that makes sense. Like nothing ever felt rushed. I was really able to sit with like the scene, the music, my emotions. I was really impressed by this whole film. It was, like you said, it was very slice of life in that a lot of the details you have to pick up on your own, just from visual cues or whatever. But man, I just, what a, like, you know, it's a tragedy the whole time. It's like a slow car crash. I just couldn't look away. It was but it was beautifully told. That's what is shit. I'm at a loss for words. I'm like repeating myself at this point. I'm so sorry.
It's amazing that when we say a slice of life movie, we think of sort of a banality, but a little comfort in it, and it's a completely subjective term. A movie where
That's so true.
someone loses his everything and his sister is a slice of life a movie where someone's whole family is like, I don't know, gassed in the chambers in Auschwitz is, for some people, is a slice of life.
But like, even with the movie being so somber, there are these really joyful moments in it, really hope-filled moments in it. Like the first time when I think it's like Setsuko is asking where their mother is, or like she just wants to go home, and they're at the school still, and they're like by a playground, and he like sort of stifles a tear, and then like jumps up on the whatever bar thing and starts
Monkey
doing
bar
flips, and
thing.
he like just makes this conscious decision that like he's gonna be the caretaker for Setsuko. He's gonna do anything and everything in his power to be her caretaker. And there's this like sweeping orchestral music. I don't know. It's like Alex, like you said, like like watching a slow car crash, because you're really just watching these two children slowly starve over the course of 89 minutes.
And like you said, what's great is he has dedicated himself to like, I'm going to protect her at all costs. He's doing it in like too prideful of a way, as we've discussed, but he does manage to find those small comforts of life. And I think it's most symbolically represented in the candy that they have, the hard candy in the container. And what's so great about that is it brings them so much joy, but just like everything else, they have to fucking ration it. You know what I mean? So they're doling out their happiness in tiny bits over, you know, at their lowest moments. And then even so far as to make the rock candy tea. That was the moment I was just like, I was like, man, they're at their lowest. They're still even at their mom's house, or excuse me, their aunt's house at that point when they're making that tea. And I was just like, dang, I literally think I said like, they can't get any lower than this. And then it does.
You know, you have Sakuga looking at us, and without any context of knowing the movie, you're like, oh, that's so cute. That's so happy.
I know. You're like, oh, that's adorable. I wish it makes people be like, I should see this movie. It's so cute. And then it's like, oh, no.
Yeah, because she is
I wonder
cute.
if this movie had as much merchandise as Totoro. If there were plushes.
Jeez. But
Madeline, I wanted to ask, was that candy tin at any point filled with candy, with fruit candy?
It was. It was filled with those the fruit drops. Yeah. It was.
That's awesome. Did you try making a tea with it?
No, I don't really like hard candy, and I just like they kind of like congeal into one thing, and then I like dug them out. I like have a whole collection of these tins already.
That happened too, though.
Yeah. It happens with them.
That happened in the movie too. The ones that congealed together, and the animation in this is so good, especially with all the food, the candy, the water, the fire. I think the most beautiful little bit of animation was when Setsuko, I think she's already dead, so I think it's like a spirit or a ghost or a memory, but she's like sewing in their bomb shelter, and she pricks her finger, and the blood that wells up. I was like, that's the most beautiful animation I've seen in 20 years. Like, what the hell? And this is older than everything else we've been seeing. I just think the attention to detail is so good, but also the payoff is so clearly worth it, in my opinion.
My take on watching that, I haven't watched it in a while, is that these are little vignettes of how she spent her time alone in the bomb shelter while Saito was out stealing food or doing whatever he could just to get by. And it's, again, going back to this like sad but like hopeful thing. It's like she sort of was leading a very full life, like she, you know, as bare bones and
she found happiness
yes, that's a great way to put it,
in the bare bones of it all. Ooh, that's good.
And and that all happens over said needle drop where they play like where the two vacationing or girls returning home play a record, and then it pans over to their little hill down the way, and it's like silent. You just have the music and these little vignettes playing for a couple minutes, just different things Setsuko did to fill her time there. And I like
was
that
probably
part
my favorite
always
part
makes
of the
me
movie.
well. Yeah,
that was
it's
probably my
so
favorite
powerful.
part.
And that's another one of the things that I love about this movie. I kept reading about what they call it, but there's like a phrase for Japanese words that are almost like filler words, or I think they call them like pillow words. And one of the reviews I was reading of this movie is that like the director, or what this movie does really well, is like they use different cutaways, not like B-roll, but like it'll cut to like a random shot of nature or frog swimming in a pond or whatever. Just like cut away real quick, give you a brief pause, change the scene. And again, it's just all these little vignettes of like the beauty within the absolute tragedy of
Mhm.
the story unfolding.
Mm. What is sorry, Mads, what's your favorite scene, would you say? I feel like favorite's so hard to nail down here, but what would you say your favorite scene is?
I think it was the end where their spirits are just going and looking over a 1980s Tokyo, which is when Japan had its
Mm.
economic boom. And that's the
Oh,
one
yeah.
that gets me. Is I've always
Mm.
I'm hit emotionally not when the very sad part happens, but when they find peace after it. And that is definitely
Mhm.
what got me in. Their tin is filled. The fruit draft's tin is full again.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll be full forever for them. Oh.
Yeah.
How do you two read the moments where the narrative story itself sort of zooms out and you see Saita and Setsuko, I think, observing, like it's like the red washed out scene. It's their spirits in some sense, but what is your take on, like, is it him viewing these moments where he could have done things differently, or like how would you interpret what's
Interesting.
happening
I kind of thought
there?
the whole thing was so in the subway in the beginning when he's like dying, I kind of thought his life was flashing before his eyes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's hard for me to truly, I mean, it's part of me that's just saying in this moment, I don't know. I think just because the whole thing is, the whole thing is just such an apology. I think he might just been tortured with how he did everything right, but it still went wrong. And for that, he's
The
Mm-hmm.
so
mistakes.
sorry. He's 14 years old.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
devastating.
part of his pride, and I guess this is maybe what led me to believe he was a little older, is he's always wearing like a military uniform,
Yeah.
like a child soldier, or like a soldier in training, if you will. And so, gosh, yeah, I didn't catch it on watching how much his pride in the situation really was the slippery slope for it all. He was like, we can do this on our own. We don't need no one.
Right.
And at one point, she's like, I could find someone to adopt me if that'll be easier for you. And I was like, what? I was like,
Jeez.
no. How do you? Oh my God. She shouldn't have to
Uh-huh.
think about that at that. Oh God.
Well, I think he just wanted a world for the two of them. Like he loved his mom and his dad, but for everything, it was just the two of them. And then once they were spirits, I think that's why I also like is he finally got it. He finally got it was just them in their personal heaven, which is what he was trying for the whole time.
That is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. Oof.
Personal heaven's a great way to put it. So we talked a little bit about the aunt, who is in some way cruel, and maybe the aunt was the other part of the metaphor of like
She's
she's
not
maybe
outright
representative
cruel,
of
though.
like
Yeah.
society, or like the structures or the social structures or something. Again, I'm butchering whatever the metaphor was. But the other poignant scene that I've seen some discussion about is when Saita gets caught stealing food and taken to the police station, and it's
Yeah.
like one of the few in the latter half of the movie, one of the few moments where he experiences some
Kindness.
semblance of kindness,
Yeah.
and you can feel the relief, and you just want to, like, please, Mr. Kind Police Officer, like, take these kids in or something. Like, let's savor this
They
moment.
can't.
But it sort of just goes back to their reality. Yeah.
I mean,
It quickly goes back to their reality.
when the man selling him the wood for the funeral pyre was just saying like it was like so casual, like this will burn up the body real good. it was just someone who was just so.
He has smile.
When you're selling, I mean, so I used to work at a children's clothing store, and occasionally you get parents who come in looking for something to bury their child in, and it happens. I've been one of the people doing that, and they're looking for something for their child, and you still have to be a salesperson for it, and you have to be honest, like, warning to the audience, this is like gold star sad moment, but there was a couple, their infant son had died, and they were looking for a suit, and they said, oh, this suit is too small, and I had to say, you need a bigger size because his body's gonna swell up. And you just have to be a sales.
Yeah, that's
it was not fun today. My boss let me go home after that. I was just like, hey, Jen, I just had to sell a suit to grieving parents. Can I go home? And she was like, yeah. It was not fun. But, you see with the aunt, the guy selling the cop, like, they just have to keep going and selling and doing it. And it's tragic, but they just have to keep going on. So I get why the cop still apprehended him. I get why the salesperson was cheerful. I get why the aunt was frustrated. She is taking care of a whole family during a food shortage. And he was still acting like
during a war.
Yeah. And I'm sure for some other people.
There's a lot going on.
For some other people, Seinfeld was very selfish, and he was probably cruel in someone else's eyes.
No, they did a good job. There's no like downright out evil stepmother in the thing. You know what I mean? Everyone's very justified. Evan and I are wannabe movie critics. We're also wannabe chefs.
We're all doing more cooking at home now. If you want to elevate your home cooking, you need nice tools to do it. Louis Kitchenware will get you there. They have beautiful stainless steel pans, non-stick bakeware, knives, all the stuff you need. Safe, high-quality materials, constructed to last, made in the United States, founded in Detroit.
Moving into my condo, we got hand-me-downs. So this new Louis Kitchenware has been great, and we love the discount. We want to share that with our listeners.
You can use code 2dudes, that's TWO dudes, at louiskitchenware.com, and that'll give you 10% off anything on the site.
Check out our link in bio.
2 dudes watch cartoons.
And we're back from that commercial break. So here to talk more about this tragically beautiful movie. I think something that if I didn't fully get this point out, there was never like an evil stepmother. There was never anyone that was just downright debaucherous, mean, like just mean for the sake of mean. Like everyone was very, I don't want to say super justified, but like everyone's going through a very rough time, and it's very clear, and they depict that very well through the slice of life details they throw in.
This could sound kind of weird. You know who was very objectively mean during that time was the Japanese Imperial Army. Because
you know what? Yeah, they're the villains.
The thing that they were so proud of and protecting, and I'm not being like Japan is the evil because they were the accidents, but like the U.S. did awful things too, hence the movie. But let's be real, like Imperial Japan, what they were really proud of was committing some of the worst atrocities.
Yeah.
In history.
Yeah. I think
they were so glad the Nazis said, hey, cool it.
Germany surrendered, and they were like, we will never surrender. It was like, well, the war's over.
The U.S. set Japan up to do that. They didn't brush on that in Oppenheimer, but basically they knew Japan would surrender, but they made it so Japan would not, and they said unconditional surrender. We can do whatever we want, and they're like,
oh, they asked on reasonable terms.
Yeah, and Japan would have had to agree to everything, and they're like, no, because Germany didn't surrender under unconditional terms. Italy did, and so they're like, oh, yes, we gotta drop a bomb. Yeah. So they were set up for that.
The most fucked
They were
up part of it all is like it wasn't one bomb, it was two bombs. Like and here's something Oppenheimer blew my mind, because I was always, I don't know if I was taught, learned, led astray. I always was under the assumption the US dropped one bomb and was like, surrender. And Japan was like, never. And then they dropped a second bomb. And then Japan was like, okay, we surrender. I learned from Oppenheimer, their plan was to drop two from the jump. They were going to drop two bombs.
So actually, it is because of Fat Man, which was the bigger bomb, but it was just carried out so poorly. It had a smaller explosion. Fat Man was supposed to be the big one. And Truman
Hence the
had no
name.
idea about it happening. And yeah, named after characters from, I think, the Maltese Falcon.
Interesting.
Huh.
But it was because of that the president has the final say of like all attacks and bomb droppings. It was after that because it was just a bunch of drunk fuckwads who were like,
Bunch of frat boys.
Actually, yeah, I've been reading on some of the stuff that U.S. soldiers did during the war, and I'm just like,
It was
great
very
is
much
just
like,
my ass.
USA.
yeah, that's some false branding there. Yeah.
Awful atrocity. Our
What-
boys and
I don't mean to laugh at awful atrocities, but you're right. It's yeah. I got a bad laugh meter. I'm sorry.
Since we're on the topic, one of my main takeaways from the movie Oppenheimer is that I really enjoy movies of scholars at university running around in their little vests and scribbling on chalkboards. Like that
What's
really
the other one?
Theory of Everything, like Beautiful Mind, like any movie like that. If there's a fucking chalkboard in the 50s or 40s or whatever.
Imitation Game.
Okay, I just realized something amazing. Yes, Robert Oppenheimer, brilliant math and physics genius, teaching at
AKA
UC Berkeley.
Oppie.
Built bonds.
Mhm.
Forget to eat. You know who fit all those categories too?
Who?
Ted Kaczynski, the bomber.
Strangely, both remembered for bombings that they had committed.
Does that make Oppie the duo bomber?
Yes. Oh no.
He's the skinny bomber.
Oh god.
Ooh, it's not funny to laugh at such horrible things, guys. I'm talking to myself. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I do think that is something I do. I don't know if others do, but when I get like extremely uncomfortable, all I can do is laugh. So
I point out and shame people who laugh. Out of
that's fine.
discomfort.
Please do. I'm not ashamed of myself for laughing at a bomb. Or yes, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. I for real I think I laughed out loud at the Kyoto line in Oppie just because of the callousness of it. Like I feel
was
like
the
that
only
was
one in my
the
theater.
intention
I
of
said,
the scene,
"Oh,"
not to
out
make
loud.
you laugh. Yeah,
said,
I don't think it's
"Oh."
meant to make you laugh, but it's supposed to
No, yeah,
make
I
it
get
feel
that reaction.
cold and disconnected and like so far removed of like the horrors and realities from it.
Yes. That line is like the tippy top of it, and like this movie, Grave of the Fireflies, is like in the weeds of the decision on the other end. It's just in.
That was my fucked up logic for suggesting this.
Yeah, he said.
Yes, also, like Tokyo is a very culturally significant city.
Yeah. Since we're on it, we're gonna dive right in. Like, two bombs of that magnitude change like a country, not only physically, obviously, but like culturally, economically. There like is significant changes that happen over like a lifetime, if you will, and I just think it is fucked up that anyone could do that to other human beings. Sorry, it's insane. I'm like trying to calculate in my brain, and that's why Oppenheimer was such a good movie. Though is like, I don't even like. At times he like didn't he. I really think he convinced himself like that bomb wasn't gonna get used, like from the jump, and he refused to see any other signs. You know what I mean? It's fucked.
Well, it's also because he himself was trying to prevent, because, you know, Vernon Heisenberg was, first off, Vernon Heisenberg was the one Nazi German scientist to stay behind. He's like brilliant. Like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is still a massive, like one of the most famous elements in mathematics. But he was building it, and Oppenheimer's like, he was so oblivious to news, culture around him. And then once he was like, oh, these Nazis are killing Jews.
He said, oh, I don't like that. He's like, oh, maybe I do need to step up here.
Right, yeah.
You guys want to hear a weird tangent connection that I made in the movie Oppenheimer? So when I found out that Heisenberg was a Nazi, I like connected Breaking Bad, and I was like, oh, that's why the neo-Nazis seek him out in the end. They think he's a Nazi drug dealer because he calls himself Heisenberg.
Vernon Heisenberg, he said in private to his wife that he absolutely detested Nazis.
Oh, interesting.
And they did make fun. So he was really loyal to Germany, and Germany used to be the scientific center of the world, and it was where all the great physicists, they were in Germany, most of them. It was like Germany or France. Then you got Niels Bohr in Denmark, who I wish they brushed up on Niels Bohr more in the movie Oppenheimer, because he is one of the funniest dudes I have ever heard of. So they were trying to hide him in Denmark from the Nazis. And Heisenberg actually asked Niels Bohr, it's like, hey, do you want to help me work on the atomic bomb? And Niels Bohr's like, I'm Jewish. But apparently Niels Bohr...
Great response.
He was so easily recognizable. One, because he had such a big head, and so big that when they smuggled him out of Britain by plane, the helmets couldn't fit on his head.
Oh, no.
So he would just try to talk to everybody, and he would be like, hi, I'm physicist Niels Bohr. And he would do that everyone where Leslie Groves had to personally chaperone him to Los Alamos.
Wow.
Heisenberg he was not like Nazi. He was just very loyal to Germany, but he also was loyal to his own personal interests, just like Walter White. He didn't care who it hurt. It was more about what he would be able to accomplish, and that is another parallel there.
Interesting. I love that.
That's still one I gotta sit through the whole thing. I caught.
Evan, I watched Breaking Bad with you. What are you talking about?
You watched the finale with me, which is one of the few episodes I've seen. I get this weird kick out of like.
I watched it live with you.
Yeah, get like soaking in the emotional payoff of a series finale without like having invested in the series. I don't know. It's like stolen valor for TV. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of context. Yeah. Remember when this is like when in the part of season 3 when Walter brought that octopus.
Yeah. Love that part. Favorite scene. The dialogue, beautiful.
Giant octopus from
And when the
Breaking
Nazi
Bad.
zombies come back, that was great too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I talking about that Finnish movie, Dead Snow.
Yeah. Oh my
There's
gosh,
a
Evan, I
Nazi
can't believe you just seen one of. Okay, never mind.
I've seen a few.
That's not.
But I remember
That's not
the
what we're
finale.
talking about here. You know what? We've moved very tangentially. I think we've covered a lot here. I would love to give everyone a moment to kind of give our closing final thoughts on Grave of the Fireflies before we move into like the reviews, and we'll give it like a letterbox rating. So I'm happy to start unless anyone would like to take the lead here.
Go for it.
Okay. Grave of the Fireflies. What an emotional roller coaster I've been taken on this day. I guess I should have taken a bigger leap in logic when Evan was like, oh, Oppenheimer just came out. Maybe we should watch this movie. Like I said, knew it would be sad. I just didn't know it would be like, it's like if sadness and happiness are a step forward and a step backwards, it was literally always like, oh, a half step forward. Oh, 4 steps backwards, though. Oops. And so those little half steps of happiness, though, it was so surreal being able to watch people try to find happiness in the tiniest moments that at times I found this to be a very optimistic movie, which is hard to say when it was just overall such a bummer in the best way possible. I enjoyed every minute of it, and I highly recommend this movie. If you haven't seen it, even if you've just heard us talking about it, I still think it's worth watching just to feel what we have felt and gone through here. Like it is, it is up there as probably one of the best Ghibli films I've seen.
Yeah, Madeline, do you want me to go, or do you want to go for it?
You go.
Okay. I've seen this movie now, I want to say 3 times in my life. Once in high school, once in college, and now once as an adult. It hits as emotionally forcefully each time. I knew full well going in the emotional turmoil that I was about to send Alex on. What I didn't expect was for me to go on the same sort of emotional roller coaster again of watching this movie.
Tripped and fell with me.
This is on pretty much any best animated films of all time list. USA Today, I believe, in 2018 put it at number 1.
Wow.
It is a widely celebrated Ghibli film. I think it's important to note, directed by Isao Takahata. I feel like a lot of times Ghibli sort of is used synonymously with Miyazaki, but this is one of their greatest films. And like you said, Alex, it's just like, despite how sad and tragic this movie is, like there are these profound moments of joy and hope that make this movie worth coming back to, worth watching for a first time if you haven't seen it. And now we're all sort of trauma bonded together. Like
exactly,
it's sort of this thing. I don't, Madeline, I don't remember how this movie came up, but like we both connected on the fact that, like, oh, you've been through this emotional ride as well. Like we're all sort of connected.
We've both been shot through the heart by this movie.
Yes. Let's
talk about it.
Yeah. All right. Closing thoughts, Madeline.
Yeah, it's good. No, okay.
Well said.
Yeah.
I like to think of animation of why is a movie an animation? What could not be accomplished by having actors in a studio? And so why there's so many wartime films about tragedy and loss, and so why does this one work so well? It has to be an animation. And I think it speaks to the testament of the medium. There are some things that emotionally can be expressed so well through the stroke of a pen. If you show the spirits as the same medium as the slice of life moments, it all just melds together so harmoniously. You don't notice the sort of CGI that's added in. It's just all cohesive and together. And this is one of the most, all of Ghibli is sort of a testament because it really combines imagination of, celestial fantasy and human matters so cohesively. And I think when people disregard animation, they are completely disregarding what it can achieve. I think this is one of the most amazing films to really showcase what is possible with 2D animation. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it. I'm always gonna prefer 2D drawings to 3D.
Fist bump.
Because I'm
right there with you. I totally agree.
I love the imperfections. I love seeing a little mistake in early Simpsons.
It adds heart.
It's heart. It shows that there's people behind it, and maybe it will never get a comeback with 2D animation in the way like with film. But that's why I like movies, is you can go back and you see a great movie like Grave of the Fireflies, and it just gets better every time.
Yeah. Real
Really
quick.
well said.
Yeah, real quick on that thought though. Like what is amazing about this movie, specifically through the lens of animation though, is that like they're animating, there's nothing say for like the spirit realm or whatever, but there's nothing out of this world.
Yeah.
It's not like a Spider-Verse where there's all like multiverse, and you really couldn't pull this off without it looking like shitty CGI. Like they are just animating sort of the realities of life, and it's incredibly beautiful. This movie does that really well.
Part of the plus to it being animated is we're really able to like enhance those small moments of joy that maybe live action wouldn't have been able to catch the same. And I really do think that's like a big strong point of the movie, a big theme throughout the whole thing. So I hadn't thought about like why tell this story animated, but you're so right. And I actually think I'm like gonna start thinking about that more when I'm like grading these movies. Like, why animated to tell this story? I really like that. Oof. I got a review because it's just encapsulating what I'm feeling so well. So we're gonna hotbox, go over a couple of letterbox reviews, and then we'll give it a 1 out of 5 stars rating here. So this one, literally me, it's they gave it 5 stars. It just says in all caps, "Hey yo, what the fuck?" That's how I feel. I'm like sad, but also happy and excited to talk about this movie. I'm a mixture of these hard candies right now. Oof, so good.
Mm-hmm. I have a 5-star review here on Letterboxd by Sarah Clements. Masterpiece. Never watching it again, though. Yeah, totally understand. Totally
fair.
understand.
I think Sarah should watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
I think she should too, because it's something I want to revisit, because I think not all movies, but I think a lot of movies, something can be really gained on a rewatch, knowing where things are going, what's important, and so if it's something you care about and like had an emotional impact on you, I generally am a big pro rewatcher. Like I think
I actually have a very funny story with the rewatch. Rewatching the Robert Zemeckis masterpiece Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Love
And
it.
I was like, this is the plot of Chinatown.
It is. Oh my God! Wait, I've never realized that. I just read
And then
through
I
it in
read
my head. I'm like,
something-
wait a minute.
I read up and there was like, no, it's not a coincidence. Chinatown was supposed to be a trilogy.
Oh.
And they just recast one of for the freeway for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But that's what's amazing about rewatches. You're just
Love
like,
it.
wait,
Wait a minute. I love that. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is really famous for like their animation has these great shadows in the real world. The lighting in this film was phenomenal too, and that's weird to say about like an animated film, but the lighting was spot on in every scene. And like from when they're in the war bunker with the fireflies all around them, and this it leads into my review. 4.5 stars. Why do fireflies have to die so soon? Yep, that was rough. And I think that's another, like, if you're gonna sum up the line in one movie, that kind of feels pretty good too, actually.
I got one more 4-star review. The reviewer Wood writes, in case you're looking for a movie about children starving to death but can only stomach it in cute animation form, boy, do I have a film for you.
Talking about pitching a sales pitch for
Yeah.
like rough things. Oh my God.
This movie is part of a rare pantheon of movies, of like all-time sad movies that I have seen, that I instantly connect with other people that have seen them. So my other 2 all-time sad movie recs,
Yeah.
maybe it's just one. The third one I haven't watched. I've only seen once, but my second one is Dear Zachary. God damn it, I did it again with the fucking camera.
Dear Zachary, I knew you were going to say that. Me and Evan, another thing we watched together, that I think we were in a room full of people and we, like, all 8 of us were sobbing, like, together.
There's a documentary. It's from 1981. Let me look up the creator. I found it when I went through like a YouTube. Like I wanted to see what movies were available on YouTube, and there's a Japanese documentary from 1981 by Yuki Yukute Shingun, or that's the name. That's the
Okay.
name.
What's
It's
it about?
Director Kazuo Hara. It's called The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On. And it centers on Kenzo Okuzaki, a 62-year-old veteran of Japan's campaign in New Guinea in the Second World War, and follows him around as he searches out those responsible for the unexplained deaths of 2 soldiers in his unit.
Oh.
Documentary filmmaker Errol Morris listed it as one of his top 5 favorite films for Rotten Tomatoes, and it does go into the undying loyalty of
Wow.
Japan during World War II and what harm that yields for people.
Interesting. I'm going to have to check that out now that I'm in the mood.
It's on the Criterion channel if you're looking for it.
You should
Oh,
absolutely
perfect.
watch it.
Yeah, the Criterion channel, just where I was going to go after this. So
Let me just switch out Steven Universe
Yes.
first.
let me make this easy. I got my rating. It's 5 out of 5.
Yeah, definitely 5 out of 5.
Mads,
no
you don't need to don't let peer pressure. If it's not, don't succumb. How many stars you giving it?
It's a good movie. 5.
Yeah, okay, good. This is I guess why I was like excited to talk about it with y'all, because I knew we would come to a conclusion of like, this is just fantastic all around.
So that concludes our review of Grave of the Fireflies.
You want to wrap it up with some news here?
Yeah, as with our last episode, since writers and actors are still on strike, we're going to be sharing just some headlines we read about the strike going on. First, I think it's 50 VFX animators at Marvel are organizing to unionize in a year where Marvel's caught a lot of flack for their rushed and overworked VFX artists. I think it's a step in the right direction. Like I said at the top of the episode, 100 days in on the writer's strike,
that fully.
South Korean actors are also trying to negotiate for better pay from Netflix specifically.
Netflix specifically, if found out, does not pay South Korean actors the same that they do their U.S. actors by a large margin.
And the company refuses to meet with their union.
After NBC Universal studio blocked the pavement outside their studio to prevent people from striking, thousands gathered outside in the largest display of the picket line in the entire WGA SAG strike that is happening. So, you know, you shitty studios, you're going to push back. They're going to push back too. So I love to see it. Once again, just fully support here. And that's why we're trying to keep our content away from the struck companies.
To go to Soviet animation.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations?
I mean, honestly,
we're open directs. We're going episode by episode.
Yeah, we're flying by the seat of our pants at the moment. We had a whole schedule, kind of threw it out.
What's his name again? His name is Yuri Norstein. He's a fantastic.
I actually feel like I've heard that name before.
All right.
What? All right, we'll check it out. We appreciate it. Hey, this has been a lot of fun. I think. Does anyone have? I'm good on news. You have any more news? I don't like talking about how shitty these fucking companies are, if I'm being honest.
One last hodgepodge of headlines is some of these companies are indicating that they want to come back to the tables, but at the same time, you also have Warner Brothers Discovery bragging on their earnings call that keeping writers and actors on strike has saved them more than $100 million. So
outrageous.
All that shit. What a shitty thing to do.
That ain't right.
Yeah, that's fucked up. So on the one hand, they're like, oh, we can't negotiate, but they're bragging on their earnings call, which is just shitty altogether, all around. Entertainmentcommunityfund.org. If you would like to donate to striking writers and actors, you can find information about the WGA strike at WGAcontract2023.org. I hope I'm getting that right. I'll have it in the show notes. And then information about the SAG-AFTRA strike at sagaftrastrike.org as well. Madeline Horwath, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this monumental film.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine for many years. Where can our listeners find you online?
Find me on X.com and Instagram.
That might be the first time we've said it on the podcast. You may have the honor of that. I hate that so much.
Madeline is a very funny cartoonist. We recently did a cartoon together, a daily cartoon a couple of days ago. Bestowed one of their very funny jokes and let me draw it, and it was awesome.
Whoa.
I couldn't have done it without you.
It was a team effort.
That's too kind. That's too kind.
What?
It was
Two
fun.
brains are better than one.
It's also a lot of fun just splitting up the work. It makes cartooning a lot
Evan's
more
like,
fun.
I love the drawing, but I suck at ideas.
Well, I also I like your style. I think it works 50 style with aliens and stuff. It just it works.
Alex, want to close this out?
Yes, thank you all for being here. If you enjoyed this episode and want more Two Dudes, please check out our other episodes on Apple, Spotify, and also on YouTube. Please don't forget to follow us on YouTube. Hit the sub. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Two Dudes Watch Cartoons. And please rate and review wherever you're leaving this podcast. 5 stars or nothing else. If it's lower than a 5, don't even bother, because we all left 5s today. It's a leave a 5-star reviewed kind of day.
This podcast is as good as Grave of the Fireflies.
Exactly. The same amount of stars are deserved.
Podcast at Park.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yes. And as always, just thank you for being here with us. And, we'll catch you next time.
You stole my
I stole
goodbye.
it.
Oh my
I
god,
stole
you fucking
it.
asshole. All right, goodbye.
I knew you were going to keep going.
Cartoons. Yeah.
Oh boy.
That was great.